All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to this session all about play. I've entitled Play Together, Build Community. And as more folks kind of pop in here, we'll just get them caught up to speed. But my name is Tyson Bankert. I go by he, him pronouns. And first off, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. So for myself, acknowledging the land in which I reside upon, which is Treaty 7, means to respect, honor, and humbly know how I can support the relentless and good stewardship and practices of those that came before me and that are currently protecting the land I am on, which is Treaty 7. Treaty 7 is home to the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani, as well as home to Tsuut'ina Nation, Irish Nakota Nations, and home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. As a guest and privilege from settler colonialism here on Turtle Island, it is my duty to support efforts of land back, decolonization, and climate justice for all of our collective future. And I invite folks who are also on either here in Canada or across the world to put in the chat their specific territory that they might be on. All right, so a few more people came into the room, so I'll just introduce myself really quickly again. My name is Tyson Bankert. I want to just quickly go over a little bit of the guidelines for today. So we have audio, so please remain muted unless speaking to reduce background noise. Your video, please limit turning your camera on or off as much as possible, but I definitely encourage, if you would like, to keep it on. And then also, if you need any assistance, please message in the chat. And as for recordings, the session will be recorded, so if you would like to prefer not to be captured, keep your video off. I will be prompting folks later on in the conversation to test a few things out, to participate as we go throughout the session today. All right, so we'll get right a little bit into it. So I typically wear very many hats as it comes to community development, but one of them ones that I'll be wearing today is my Coach T hat. I don't physically have a hat on at the moment, but you can imagine that for me, most people who kind of know me as Coach T know me from my experience and planning around Recess Calgary. And so I run a program called Recess Calgary. It's basically an opportunity for adults to play. So imagine opportunities around playing like recess, games from the playground, summer camp, and our gym class. And so these are really non-competitive opportunities for people to play and engage. And so I'll talk a little bit about my experience over the last 4 years of hosting Recess Calgary, but specifically making sure that community is at the forefront. So I started Recess in the summer of 2018 and convening people to play these games. It's been really a great opportunity to experiment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, to try new things and engage people and help foster connections. So literally it has been a playground to experiment, gain new leadership skills, and also make new friends. And so if the slide to the right here is a little bit of some of the themes that I really try and hold dear to the work that I do within Recess. So inclusion, cooperation, centering everyone, interplay, so that inner child, which is being silly, whimsical, wellness, taking a break, and playmaking, which is my term on placemaking, which is curiosity, friendly vibes, childhood games, and creativity. Just to name quite a few of the themes that I really try to instill in the work that I do in community development. So you might be wondering a little bit of what does this have to do with ABCD? Well, a lot. So specifically though, around building relationships. I believe that using play and whimsy can be a tool to build relationships a lot faster. And also it allows for people to to be a bit more flexible and nimble in the way that they relate to each other and their sort of traditional methods of community development. And so I didn't know this at the very beginning of when I first started this, as that this would be sort of ways in which I can begin translating the work I do as co-lead of CDLI, so Community Development Learning Initiative. And I'll talk really quickly about that, which is a Calgary-based network for community-minded people seeking to deepen their connections and capacities to create positive change in their communities. We like to describe this, and also Amanda, who's in the room here, our work is really about holding space for imagining new futures together, where all people in Calgary welcome each other and work together to take collective action for the common good. And so for those of you who are just joining, who maybe didn't hear from where I was from, I am seated here in Treaty 7, which is Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And so today we're talking a little bit more about what it means to add play to our community development efforts. All right. So play. We all kind of know what this is, right? So it can be in numerous different ways. You can play music together, you can pretend together, you can play sport, games, and create. So I really emphasize the games, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens when we play together. What happens when we actually begin to take the spirit of play into our community and the ways that we connect with each other. Really quickly, I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about how I've done it in the work that I do through Recess, but then I'll kind of quickly talk a little bit more about what that might look like for us here today and for your own journeys as it relates to play. All right, so as I said, I've been doing Recess for 8 years, and here's just a couple of pictures of how in which it has showed up in the work I do, getting adults to play, run around, and have lots of fun. And people have really kind of told me that it's just an opportunity for wellness, a break. And so that for me has been really an important underpinning to my community development practice, which is how do I get people to come together in ways in which that they may have haven't done before. Now, over the last 2 years, though, during the pandemic, it definitely shifted a little bit than just sort of playing. It actually began to look a lot more like creativity, creative projects, where I was getting people to paint a big snail shell, and kind of that representation of slowing down. What does it mean for us to actually take a literal break? Other opportunities like game tables. In my city of Calgary are formerly known as Mohkinstsis. Roads were open, and although many people thought they were closed, I say that they were open for the public to actually walk and engage with each other in a different kind of way. So it started to kind of expand my notion of what does this play actually begin to look like, not just for myself to host activities, but for people to begin engaging and building connections with each other. So I ended up thinking a little bit about what are some of the ways in which we begin to instill playfulness in the ways in which we engage residents, our friends, our larger community with play at the forefront. Here's sort of a couple of ways to sort of do this. By remaining to staying curious. And staying curious, I think, gets to that idea of we want to begin to always exploring. Staying curious as sort of the facilitator or the person who's holding space, allow for other people to show up authentically. In my time with a Recess, it was really interesting to really ask people to how do you own the space? What kind of games do you want to play? How do you want to show up in this space? Because that for me really allowed for other people to kind of also play in this sort of playground that I was creating. And then experiment. So nothing is ever finalized. It is always an opportunity to try new things and continue to facilitate this new curiosity that was happening. So when we play together, I think we ultimately recharge, we connect, we can escape, and we can explore. What can play together feel like? So a little bit deeper now, I started to get this sense of play is also an opportunity where we can take breaks. Something that I always say at recess is the best part about gym class is that as an adult is now you can take a break. You can opt in, opt out of whatever you'd like. And so often I think in many of the circles that at least I know I'm in, it continues to kind of feel like a little bit of a grind, right? And how do we, and you have to facilitate that sense of break, that capturing of, hey, we actually need to take a few minutes here to either to reflect, but also to allow for something new to emerge. And for me, I think something that's been really important is this idea of resistance. So play as an act of resistance to that continuous grind of having to always have an agenda, always having to think about what's next around that corner, or the next project or the next program that we want to do to engage people. Playing together also allows for this idea of making mistakes. So something that really resonated with me in the classes that I was running through recess was people would laugh, or they would snort, or they would be really silly and goofy and fall over in different ways or run after each other. And it was really this sense for me where we can actually make mistakes. We don't actually always have to show up as our adult selves. We can actually show up as our child self and be willing to make mistakes, and being in a space where perfection isn't the standard. It's actually it's never the rule. And so for me, making mistakes was something that was really important. And playing together, I think, allows us to actually share our ideas. An experience that I actually had this summer was around world building. And world building, is a creative process, I think, that a lot of people can begin to attach to. So I did a lot of chalk making over the summer, and seeing people kind of begin to, some people are like, oh, I don't want to do chalk. I didn't come here to just draw on the ground. But creating and facilitating opportunities where they could add their own ideas and their own pictures and the colors that they want to be part of really helped me think about, wow, this play here has really broken down maybe these barriers people have had. And then ultimately, it means we are vulnerable with one another. This vulnerability really does allow for people's guard to be down. This idea of childlike whimsiness that I was explaining earlier really encourages people to show up as their authentic self. And as I was saying earlier about what does that mean for assets, I think these are the areas in which I think we allow for play, and the idea of our strengths and asset-based community development then begin to kind of come into play. Is no pun intended, but it really does come into this idea that we can show up in our strengths when we begin to offer and provide opportunities of play, because we can take breaks, we can reflect and resist, we can make mistakes, we can share our ideas, and we can be a bit more vulnerable with each other. So what I want to encourage everyone to do now is we're going to go into an opportunity to sort of share stories of play. I think storytelling is a really impactful way to begin to hear from each other and connect with each other, and also learn from each other. So oftentimes at recess, there's sort of this scaffolding that happens where, I might do an icebreaker and introducing people. I might create some ways of engagement, so how we want to treat each other in this space. We might start off playing sort of more games that are a bit more mild, that don't kind of get people too vulnerable too quickly, and so, but by the end of the class, people are there's always a couple people who maybe didn't know each other and who are now looking to connect with each other afterwards. They're looking to maybe go out to dinner after, or if it's a morning session, go after lunch, and hang out with each other, because there's been this sort of level of building connection that has happened. So I ask everyone to lean into that a little bit over the next 45 minutes to really have yourself think about what does that play look like. So we're going to share stories of play. There are going to be 3 ways that we are going to be able to do that. One is back from vacation. And so this idea of, I don't know what you, but when I was in class, there would be the kids who would come from, off of vacation, and they might share their favorite pictures from where they were, whether that was, at least in my case anyway, Florida or Banff or Mexico. They would share pictures. So what I'd like for you to do, if you want to pick that option, you can share a picture that represents play to you and share it on the Jamboard, and I'll show you how to do that. Then second is the show and tell. So this was one of my favorite things to do as a kid, was to do show and tell. So do you have something in the space that you're currently in that you could tell a story about play? This could be a metaphor. This could be an actual thing that you have that is a demonstration, but really try and be imaginative with that. And I'll explain that a little bit more. And finally, there's just raise your hand, which is typically just your Q&A. You're in class, so you can ask a question, comment, or idea of play that you have and share it with the rest of the class. Or if you have a question for me, all right, in my experience that I've had that I've shared today. So there are sort of 3 opportunities, 3 ways to begin engaging with the rest of the next 45 minutes. But what I will do here is I'm going to pop into the chat the Jamboard. I'm going to show you what it looks like and how you might want to display your picture. So in here, this is the Jamboard. If you want to use this option, you're more than happy to. You're more than happy to, and you can go here to your image. You can add images. You can upload an image that you have maybe on your computer. You can do your own. You can do your own picture live if you'd like. Google image search. So there's plenty of ways that you can begin kind of sharing this idea of coming back to vacation, that metaphor that we're using. All right, and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then second and third, there was the show and tell. So something in your space or in your room that you like to share about play. And finally, just simply raising your hand and asking a question, a comment around play that you have. So for me, I'll go quickly through. And so for me, my show and tell is something that I've shared before, but this is a little giraffe or llama, depending on what you want it to be. And so for me, I'm showing and telling this because it represents play for me, because it was a time when I used to do a lot of respite care with children, and we had several of these. So these are just made out of cardboard. And I was really profound by having a bunch of kids under the age of maybe 12, like 8 to 12, sit and like begin, I guess, we called it knitting, but really just like wrapping around these shapes. And so it was just, and I keep coming back to this as like a way to just take a break. And I often do this sometimes when I'm in stages of needing to reflect. So, and that taking a break that I mentioned earlier. So I encourage other folks, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can raise your hand, you can provide show and tell, or you can add your own pictures to that Jamboard link that I will resend again, just in case if you missed it. I'll give a couple of seconds I'll give a few moments for people to sort of think about what they might want to add.
Jamboard. Oh, it's gone. Oh.
Is there anyone who wants to show and tell by chance?
Can you hear me at all?
Sure can. Yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Okay. So this giant ass water bottle I carry everywhere I go pretty much.
Yeah,
I'm a big gym rat and that's like my playground.
awesome.
I did like CrossFit for a bit. I love hiking, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's a space where yeah, I feel like adults don't often have a chance to play. So I think it can be just a great space to like let loose and test your boundaries. And yeah, I think that's often what play is like is testing what we're made of, testing like yeah, pushing ourselves beyond our limits and discovering new pieces of ourselves.
Great. No, thanks, Holly, so much. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I put in the Jamboard a couple of photos. One is of my family playing volleyball, but I was also shown how I was like looking in my room, what do I have? And I came up with this photo, again, another photo of my family playing. And I'm just thinking back, because like for the last many years, we're all very active family, individually, but as a group, as a family, we go out and play all the time, whether it's organized sports or just throwing a disc around, or we're all very successful volleyball players and golfers and stuff. So yeah, I just think it's a family affair.
Awesome. Jess, go ahead.
Thanks, Tyson. I did share a photo. There's a cute little black and white pup with an orange ball there. That's our 2-year-old puppy who we play, like, he is the epitome of play. Even when you try to work, he's like, hey, maybe we should take a break and like go outside. But I did have a question. I come from an outdoor education background and like fully bought into like how quickly play can help build relationships and allow for other working relationships to happen. The work that I've transitioned to now is very much like office driven. And so I wonder, with the folks that you've worked with, you know, have you encountered any pushback when trying to engage with play, or folks who are very resistant, whether it might be, you know, challenges around being vulnerable or any of that, and how might you have dealt with that to help encourage play for different folks?
Yeah, you know, I'll kind of lean on the experience I had around, like I said, this summer I did a lot of chalk making, and one of the things that I did, which I honestly, you know, some of this stuff, when I talk about being curious and experimenting, it's really, I'm very open to that. And so one of the things that we were doing was, the game is, you know, we've all probably maybe heard of it as Hangman, for example, a spelling game where you spell and you try and guess which word is being spelled. And obviously that's not like the best, most friendliest term to be using for this game at all. And so we thought, well, what are some different ways in which we can keep playing this game, but the same idea, but use a different visual to explain that experience. So some people did, it was an alien invasion. So every time you got a letter wrong, you know, you were maybe being sucked into the UFO, or there was a volcano eruption, or there was like some other forms of which people could begin playing with. And this one particular participant, he was incredibly like, I don't want to do chalk because it was all on the ground. He's like, I don't really want to do, but I'll just sit and watch. But as we started to kind of do this world building exercise and activities, he was the first person with his hand up every single time, saying, oh, hey, add this to this visual, or to this idea. And it really got me thinking about how in which we all kind of had a very, at least everyone there anyway, had a very common grounding for this game, because we've all were maybe used to playing it. as kids. And then people could then begin exploring and playing with this original idea. And it was really cool to see that begin transpiring. And so I think, to answer your question, I think it's really about allowing for like being outside of the box as much as possible, for people to want to participate and feel like they're not being as vulnerable as they were maybe initially. And so the container really is that there should be no container necessarily in how we kind of facilitate opportunities for people to play. But yeah, thanks for the question. And Joanne, I'm curious to learn a little bit from your play experiences.
Kia ora. I put in the photo of my son with another older girl at Play Centre. So I just really wanted to mention Play Centre. It's an amazing New Zealand institution started in World War II by women during the war, where parents go and be the educators for their own children. So we go and we run an early childhood centre, but we stay and we do it all together and we learn and play together. So the mission statement, or kind of the key statement for Play Centre, was families playing together. They were champions of child-initiated play literally decades before early childhood academics even thought of that term. Such an amazing space. And you can just see here in this photo, these children are totally different ages. So that's one of the philosophies of Play Centre. All ages play together. You don't shunt off the under two somewhere else with a different ratio. That's all, just everyone mixes together. And you'd think in our society, this, 3-year-old, this girl who's 2 or 3 years older, why would she play with him? But you can see they're quite happy doing some sort of dress up scenario there. And just like just this photo of her pup, like, who better to learn play from than children? They are the total experts at play. Such a shame we often stop them playing. I think mainstream school has a lot to answer for that by not following through with play as a key method for learning. Be great if we kept them in that play stage of learning for a lot longer. So that's why I just wanted to share that photo. That was kind of what I thought of when you were talking about play.
Thanks, Joanne. Yeah, I think that's, one of the biggest things that I've had to sort of kind of help people and create my own boundaries a little bit around it too, is people say, yeah, come to my event, like host some games. And I'll always ask, well, what does it look like what does it mean for you, for the children to be there? Because so often, I'm sure we've all seen this, where something's going on and parents go, yeah, okay, to the kids, you go and play, or like, we will watch you play. And I'm always like, if I'm going to help facilitate and host something, I actually want also the adults to embrace this just as well. Because for me, it is really, about the adults being able to also play. And I'm always thinking, how do I get the children to also be as part of, or help facilitate the play for their parents? And always kind of have that conversation with sort of the organizers or someone who's inviting me in to sort of talk a little bit, what does that mean? Because that's been one of my biggest sort of barriers, I think, to start getting people to sort of see this as to your point, more inclusive of everyone. Amanda, go ahead.
So I added a murder mystery at the zoo picture on this graphic here, and it came in a newsletter just a couple hours ago. But it's like, I think, like a perfect encapsulation for me. There's like it's Calgary based, but it's not Calgary specific, but there's this like group that organizes these sort of fun, interactive, kind of puzzle-based games, and they partner with key institutions like the zoo and the library. And there's like a little bit of scavenger hunt involved, and there's a little bit of puzzle solving, and you're encouraged to do it in teams. And sometimes they'll do these special events where you have a bunch of teams together. And for me, that's a really like fun and interesting way to bring in a wide variety of people into this. Some people are there just as like to support, because it can be done as a fundraiser, and so like, well, like I will support, I want to give money, so I'm going to participate this. But then they're like encouraged to do these little puzzle teasers, and they're usually done in a way to get to know the library better or the zoo better. I think with the zoo ones, I haven't done the zoo one, but I think the idea there is also that it's a bit more family friendly and a lot more learning based. And so I think that that's just like such a fun, interesting way to bring people along who are maybe not as open to play at first, but to really kind of get in it and to kind of learn along the way and build some of those like key like relational pieces through the process too.
Love that. Yeah, that I mean that world building I think is such an opportunity there that I see. David, you mentioned a photo that you put in the chat here, well, in the Jamboard, but you talked a little bit about it. And I'm just curious to know if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about that experience that you have.
Yeah, as I said in the chat, that photo of the people doing the hopscotch using chalk, but I organize and lead a lot of walking tours when I work for the city of Vancouver and city of Calgary and on my own. But one of the ones that I always enjoy is this drive, you know, wandering the city aimlessly, but with some structure. And so that's what this one was through our Jane's Walk program, Jane Jacobs. And so what I do is I get a group of people to come together and I ask the first person, what's your favorite number? Now, let's say it's my favorite number, 11. And then I will say, what's your favorite color or what's your favorite object? And let's say they say red. So we will walk 11 blocks until we see a red thing, or we will look and try to find 11 red things on our walk, and we continue through that. And so it's just a lot of playful. And this one was that we created a hopscotch for a whole block in downtown Calgary and got people to hopscotch as part of our walk, and there's exercise and play and stuff. So yeah, it's just adding play and getting to discover your city and your neighborhoods.
Absolutely. All the things you said there are really, really exciting to me. As someone who's also hosted Jane's Walks, it's always a really great opportunity to be space to kind of be really playful. And that idea of like, I think I've played a very similar thing to that with folks where it's like, I spy, right? But like we move, we actually engage with the space instead of just sort of kind of pointing it out. But we also, we want to get people participating in that way. Penny, it looks like your image maybe has been added. I'm curious to know any thoughts if you felt like you're comfortable to share.
Hi. I had an awful time doing that. I can't, those things, I couldn't see the symbols on the left to know what they were. So looks like the third one worked. I don't know what it is. I can't see very well.
Okay, well, what I see,
however,
go ahead.
I did finally manage to get
that. Awesome. I
just bought some tools because somebody lost my toolkit. And so at an estate sale, I bought some tools. And this was one of the tools that I bought, but I don't know really what it is or what it does. It sort of looks like a cherry pitter or something like that. I'm not sure. So I wondered if anyone had ideas or how you could experiment with it and figure out what it does other than putting your finger on the sharp thing.
Right. Yeah, does anyone have any ideas or thoughts or maybe even knows exactly what it is? But I like this idea of like, what can things be used for that aren't taking things out of context sometimes too, right? And that's such an opportunity for fun, but also caution as well, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
I've done a setup like this for Heritage Week for children, where I've got a whole heap of olden days articles and just got the kids to try and guess what they are. I didn't have this one. I don't know what this one is, but that's like can be quite fun way of getting children to engage with heritage. The old school, I don't know what it's like where you guys are, but in New Zealand, whenever they have a heritage festival, normally it's quite old people going on walks talking about old buildings. It's not particularly interactive. So it's been a real mission of mine to make it more engaging for children. So that's one of the things I've done. Yeah.
Awesome.
Neat.
I'm just going to come back a little bit to this, to what can playing together feel like. And I'm wondering if anyone has any experiences around this idea of resistance or making mistakes while play, or play being an opportunity to be vulnerable and share ideas. But I'll first get to someone else just had their hand up. So Joan, if you wanted to go ahead, feel free to share.
Yeah, okay. I thought I had a picture, but I don't.
That's
but
okay.
I'm an early childhood educator, retired, and I decided when I was working that I would go to clown school and become a clown, which I did, and worked as a clown for a very long time. So that's the only thing I could find to show you.
Awesome, thank you.
It's a wonderful way to, get involved with kids and adults. Although some people are frightened, but yeah, it was fun. I love to go to the gas station and fill my car up with gas and drive them all crazy because they thought I was robbing the place.
It's great. Yeah, getting people to, I think one of the things I love about play, and specifically placemaking, is, this opportunity to create new memories, right? Of like something that can be really simple, but going, oh wow, I just saw someone with maybe not a clown car, but with a clown nose at the gas station. Interesting. And like that begins to sort of, and we have more moments like that. I think it provides that opportunities to practice culturally more joy, for sure. Anyone else have any stories that they'd like to share? Either you can raise a hand, ask any questions or comments. Another show and tell about your experience around play. So if you have something in the space that you're in, or this idea from back from vacation, you can add a few more photos to the Jamboard. I'd love to hear from other folks. And it's so great to see so many different people from different areas around the world. So I'd love to hear about your experiences that I'm sure are very different from my own.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I didn't see who that was, but feel free to chime in again.
Sorry, I had both my laptop and my phone going. Me and Dave think that either the tool is an apple skinner, or I think it might be for making wooden handles or door handles. But I think it's like you put something on it and you shave it down.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Eleanor, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a little story. Well, really experience of doing stuff with grown-ups, and that sometimes can be getting them to play when they feel comfortable is usually quite easy. But I was very surprised that I introduced one day that we should, if anybody would like to join in a little dance, and that was very much borderline, and I was very surprised to find that it was a lot easier to play, but people felt very much more vulnerable dancing. And that's, yeah, I just found that very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really interesting. And it kind of comes back a little bit to Holly's question in the chat. I think a couple of the other examples is, I sort of mentioned it before, but that scaffolding piece. So and like I said, one of my playbook ideas and experiences around experiment. So consistently coming back to experimenting. I think one of the ways that I've seen this sort of happen often is we will play a game called cat and mouse, for example, and it's basically just where one person is the cat and they're chasing around the mouse, but you have to hold hands with one another if you want to participate and play. Now I've tried that game maybe 15 minutes into the class, doesn't really work. People aren't comfortable with each other. They haven't laughed with each other. They haven't smiled with each other. They haven't broken the ice with each other enough to actually get to a place where usually at the end of the hour and a half, people can actually play that game no problem. So that's something that I've seen where I'm always sort of thinking about where's sort of the relationality between participants to sort of begin to kind of assess, and then always kind of moving, being really flexible with like maybe those two folks don't maybe work the best together, but maybe someone else does, and so usually there is opportunities to find that. And then I think also one of the ways that I think I've seen play happen is also people's willingness to. It's a little bit. I'm still kind of thinking. I'm still trying to reflect on this experiences. But what I was doing over this past summer here in Calgary was that we were doing some placemaking. So the idea was people could leave. I provided different opportunities every class, so people could leave like a little tile in the park or a little Lego. Provide some Lego bricks and then build something and leave it in the park. I also chalk as well. And so it was interesting to see how some people, and I didn't really care if people want to like leave, like take their thing with you, but what does it mean to actually share that with other people who might stumble upon this and question and wonder, what is this here, right? Why is this doing it? Create that memory for other people as well. And I think that inclusion piece of that, like this can be for everybody, even those who aren't actually participating at the very moment. Like, how do we kind of continue to begin allowing for the feelings that participants are having while playing to then convey that to other people? That we want to be able to share that with people to make that more of an inclusive environment. Yeah, Parliament. Yeah, that's great. Like in where I live, there's a lot of little. I mean, I think there's like fairy doors and gnomes, gnome trees, I guess, where people are doing that, and on small scales and big scales. But it's really just trying to like impress on people that this isn't something that I hold as like a play enthusiast, but as Coach T, something that we can all begin sort of sharing and building those like connections, not just with people, but with the place that we live in. Go ahead, Amanda. Yeah.
Well, no, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add as well that when we talk about like a little bit of like that, I say that what can play together feel like, it's a little bit of like resistance a little bit, because at least in the city that I live in Calgary here, things like chalk and writing down chalk in certain places is actually technically illegal. Or the idea of going into a public park and leaving things is like, well, how are we going to, who's going to take charge of that? What's going to happen? And there's all these sort of questions that I think we that create these real systemic barriers to us having more of an ongoing pleasurable experience in the places that we deserve to be in. And I think for me, that's a little bit of like this idea of play being an opportunity to like resist. But go ahead, Amanda, if you had any thoughts.
Oh, well, I've just been kind of ruminating on one of the earlier questions about like helping people who aren't as open to play, and thinking about what that's look like for me. And one of the so for me, being like a bit shyer and more introverted, it's like so helpful when like both the host is into it and excited. So having Tyson in a room, you're always golden. But also, like if there's other people who buy in and jump on. So like sometimes it just takes one person in the crowd to be super enthusiastic about it, and like you get help but want to participate. So that was like just something that was on my mind, as well as like trying to, like, if you're trying to host something, figuring out like who's the person who will be like your biggest cheerleader, and like leaning on them to help build that energy. Which like reminded me something you said years ago that's always stuck with me. You said, Tyson, that like it's important for us to just show up, and that sometimes like that's all like that's the most important thing we can do in our community. But kind of like I'm being reminded of that lesson you've given me before, of like showing up and being the person, so that like we're helping other people accept that play.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's like when I first started Recess, and it was really just my friends, but the friends who were you know, ex-day camp leaders, or who were recreation people who just knew exactly what to do, and not just knew how to play the game, but knew how to show up in a way to share the space with people, to sort of, you know, decrease the people who are kind of the really competitive types who just want to like win, but they knew how to shift that. And I kind of call them like the moles, right? And as I started to kind of begin to do classes and put out more to the public, I wanted to invite those people in, because I knew that they had the energy to help recreate that, because I'm in a different kind of position and responsibility as well. And so it was really interesting. So to your point, like, I think that's incredibly important. Yeah, Amanda here commented about some dodgeball principles. You know, I'm a big person who's been really engaging a lot of people in the dodgeball community here in Calgary to form our own dodgeball league. Didn't really happen, but what's been really interesting now is like, now I'm that person people like know, which is interesting. So we'll see what happens with that. But one of the things that I've really tried to talk about as it relates to play specifically is in a sport like dodgeball, which is very much like elimination. You know, you eliminate people, and the idea is you might eliminate the weakest people. You might try and go for the strongest piece, and whatever those sort of those ideas we have about what that means to play and be a good player. Something that I really was trying to convey to people is, how do you show up in this space to provide your own skills and strengths? So I know for myself, I'm also the person who likes to like be the DJ. And I also share that every week, but like bring the tunes. Some people bring cupcakes every week to like share with people. There's other people who dress up in wild costumes every week and just have fun with it. And so always, and really trying to identify this as, this could be the culture that we have in a league, rather than just sort of who can be the best person at this sport. And that there's actually plenty of other ways that people are actually engaging with it, but aren't really being understood or realized. If anything, they're just like, oh, they're just not good. When really, you can be good, bad, you can be whatever you want to be, but you can show up in the ways that you want to. And I think with play as sort of the focus, rather than winning in competition, really allow for people to be more of their authentic self, similar to what I said earlier. About like this playbook idea of like creating space for people to show up authentically. Go ahead, Joanne.
Yeah, getting back to what David just put in the chat, play is a process that is freely chosen. One of the things we really had to learn how to let go of as a play center parent was that often we would set up this amazing setup, and it would be based on what the kids had done the previous week, and we assumed they'd come in and we'd done all these ramps and they'd play with cars or whatever, and they would just come and do something completely different. Like it was not the setup, or they would dismantle it, or they would put water on it, or they would just play with it in their own way. So I think that's actually such a great way to work with community as well, because it's all about, we can't go in with these preconceived ideas that if we set it up like A, they're going to do B, because they might want to do C or D, or they might want to combine E and F together. And so I think play is a really great analogy for just letting people really express themselves, and don't assume that your setup is going to be played with the way you think it'll be played with, but just find joy in the exploration and what the people in the community or the kids bring to it, because ultimately it's the process of playing together that brings us together and creates community. It doesn't matter what the game is. It doesn't matter who the winner is. It matters that we're there playing it together.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
the relationships we build during that time, that's what's so powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that is such a, I think when we add values around, or principles around the idea of people being able to show up authentically, we want people to have to experiment, we want to be curious, I think allows for those opportunities to ruminate, right? And like be things that we hold to actually build better connections with each other, right? Because as soon as you start to say to someone, actually, you know, what's going on with that is the box isn't for you, the box needs to be thrown in the garbage, and yet that's what everyone wants to do. What happens to our connections? What happens to what's possible? And I think we end up being able to really and we also exclude people from what that might look like and what that might mean, and our own expectations of what we kind of thought as sort of facilitators. And we don't talk about assets. I mean, those are the strengths people are coming with that we want to be able to foster. Joan, go ahead.
Yeah, I do workshops in the community and in the prisons. And one of the exercises that we do is you turn to the person next to you and ask them a specific question, and you are not allowed to laugh and you are not allowed to show your teeth. And that's the only rules. And people just collapse in laughter. It's just fun.
Yeah. Laughing at each other is so important. And I think when I've seen, it's so interesting in my experiences with like recess, and I'm just getting people to run around and have fun with each other. And there's plenty of ways to laugh and have humor in the spaces that we come together with. But I so remember this one time where this woman, she was snorting every time she was having fun, and she was so embarrassed by this, and maybe it was because, you know, but she was like, I just don't ever do this. She was saying, I don't ever do. I'm like, it's totally fine. Like, as soon as I kind of gave her like the, oh, it's okay to smile and have fun and express yourself in the ways in which it's happening for you. It was really interesting. She was like, it was like let loose and kind of just continue to snort, have fun, and play. And I think oftentimes we when we get really joyful, it can be kind of a very vulnerable space. Well, everyone, we do only have about 8 minutes left. I would love to really quickly go around the room and share a little bit about just something that you're taking away from today's session. And yeah, I would love to just sort of learn really quickly what people are taking away. From myself, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk a little bit about play and to learn from different people and your experiences, because we all have it. We all have playful memories and opportunities where we're sharing with each other. So thanks everyone for taking the time to spend with me. But I'd love to hear from everyone else. Go ahead, David.
For me, is keeping it simple, enjoy and play. And I would love if Joan Sweeney puts her red nose back on and makes everybody smile.
Thanks, David.
I kind of like the some of the comments that are going on in the chat, making play being sort of political or rebellious or going against rules. I enjoy that part of life.
Thanks, Penny. Appreciate you.
I'd just like to say thank you so much for this session. It's just been such a great reminder of the power of play. I haven't thought about it for a while. I haven't been at Play Centre for a while, but wow, it's just so powerful, and what a great conversation we've had about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanne, for your contributions.
Yeah, I just wanted to say sorry I've been off the screen and not contributing, but amazing contributions for everyone. Thank you, Tyson. Again, I've always worked in the youth space and brought a lot of play into all the work I've done with young people and adults, but just hearing some fresh ideas and just a fresh reminder of how incredibly important it is to bring that in and build connection. And I've got a few little ideas. I'm going to bring Joan's little example in that activity into my next session. So some great ideas. Thanks all.
Thanks, Mona.
I think for me, one of the big takeaways I'm leaving here with that hasn't been said is that play lets us practice making mistakes and like normalizing that that's normal. So I'm appreciative of that reminder.
Thanks, Amanda. In the chat here,
I just got here at the end and didn't
ahead,
really
yeah.
I didn't really hear the session, but I can attest to the power of play in our gatherings. I work with cooperatives all over the world, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. And I have to say the most fun one that I work with on a weekly basis, we always have a doodle pad up as we're having our discussion, so people can just doodle on the pad and have a good time, because we're actually meeting all over the world. So it really pays to party.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for coming. Hope has said a nice reminder to just go with it and let go of expectations. Holly says this has been refreshing to be with like-minded people, and I second what Amanda just said. And Chantel has says how much we can connect through play, how important connection is to our work, to each other. I love how energized I feel when I play. All right, if there's nobody else, I do, in the spirit of taking a break, I want to be able to allow for people to have a little bit of time to go do what you need to do for the next session. I hope to see people around tomorrow, as I'll be going to a couple of other sessions, say hi. I did put in the chat ways you can connect with me, fun@resourcechicago.ca, or I mentioned the network that I help co-lead with Amanda, actually. You can reach me at tysonb@calgary.ca. That's in the chat. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and hope to see you around soon. Thanks.